Hello, good morning. Today I'm coming to you with a quick May wrap up, June and July TBR because I have a lot of summer reads that I need to do. So we're just gonna sort of mush those months together. I think honestly I might not do a June wrap up, but we'll get to all that. So in May, I again have not had the best reading month. I will say that I'm consuming plenty of other forms of media. I've been on a real big cartoon binge over the last couple months. So literally since January, I've watched all of She-Ra, all of Infinity Train, The Legend of Korra. I just finished watching Avatar. Yes, I know I watched them out of order. Yeah, what else? I don't know. I want Saturday morning cartoons back in my life, apparently. Anyways, but that's not books. Let's talk about the books that I read in May. So in the beginning of May, I read In a Sunburned Country by Bill Bryson. This is a travel book written in the early 2000s, I think, of Bill Bryson's travels in Australia. So if you know Bill Bryson, he's a very, very funny nonfiction writer and has written many best-selling books. This also was very funny and a really light and fast read overall. I picked it up because I was really feeling like I want to go on vacation. I mean, I would love to travel this summer, but I feel like it's not actually feasible yet, so that's neither here nor there. I, in the end, ended up being a little bit torn about this book. As I mentioned, it's quite fast-paced, it's quite funny, and I think it does give you interesting vibe for Australia, at least at that time, and sort of gives you some ideas of the culture and history. On the negative side, I would say that that history is all white colonial history, as might be expected of a travel book written in this time period. Bryson does occasionally try to address the really ingrained racism against Indigenous people in Australia, but he doesn't do a very good job of it. Frequently, the racism of white Australians is viewed as a charming personality quirk, which is really grating. Overall, I think in a lot of ways it hasn't really aged well. I think he probably would have chosen to write about those issues much differently in the modern era, but what he does well, he was doing well in the book. So on one hand, I was sort of I want to give this 4 stars, and on the other hand, I was considering some of the aspects of this book, I should give it 1 star. So I think on Goodreads, I just didn't even rate it because I feel it's very hard to rate a book when it's polarizing like that, because a 2 or 3 star doesn't actually get across my feelings about it, you know? I guess these are the limits of star ratings here. So all that being said, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you read this book, but I really want to go to Australia. After that, I read Tess of the Road by Rachel Hartman, which is a sequel to a series that she has written called I don't know, the Seraphina series. It's Seraphina and Shadow Scale are the first 2. I haven't read Seraphina in a very long time, and I don't know if I've ever read Shadow Scale, but this was sort of presented to me as a book that could be a good standalone. The reason I actually picked this up is because the description on the library website, there was an NPR quote that said something like, "This is the most empathetic novel I've read since Middlemarch," which I just found really fascinating because I feel a lot of the time there's a big divide in between classics and literary fiction and genre fiction. Classics and literary fiction can be taken seriously and compared to one another, but genre fiction is sort of out there on its own, not, relating back to great literature, I guess. And if it wasn't clear from the fact that I did not say it, this book, Tess of the Road, is a fantasy novel. So anyways, that really piqued my interest, and I listened to it on audiobook, and I can absolutely see where they're coming from. I haven't read Middlemarch, but this book definitely took on a lot of modern societal issues in a way that I see why people are relating it back to classics or literary fiction. Tess of the Road is about Tess, who is a young woman in sort of this medieval inspired fantasy world. She has been working her whole life to get her sister married off to an eligible man because their family has financial difficulties, and it was supposed to be her that was supposed to save their family through marriage, but she's been labeled as the bad one and has had some past indiscretions that her family won't let her forget. I feel like it's very obvious from very early on, at least sort of what happened, but it's sort of kept a secret on the back of the book, and I don't want to overstep with the spoilers, so I'm just going to keep it vague also. But anyways, after she successfully gets her sister married off, she ends up going on a journey of self-exploration, basically. So she hits the road and goes on a road trip with her dragon friend, or I think they're called Quiggle. They're like dragon relatives. Whatever, it is a fantasy book, let me clarify. But yeah, I think that it's a really wonderful book because it's like very character driven, and it's one of these rare fantasy books where the protagonist is allowed to feel their trauma. I don't know, in a lot of fantasy, I feel like a lot of traumatic shit happens, and like the protagonist or the characters just sort of like get up and dust themselves off or like die in a tragic way. And those are sort of like the two options. There isn't a lot of dealing with your PTSD after like the angry hordes invaded or something like that. Anyways, so I definitely would characterize this as a sort of book where, what's the Ben Wyatt quote? It's human problems in a fantasy world, or something like that.
What is wrong with you today? Did they cancel Game of Thrones?
Nothing is wrong. Just do your job. And they would never cancel Game of Thrones. It's a crossover hit. It's not just for fantasy enthusiasts. They're telling human stories in a fantasy world.
I would highly recommend this to you if you're sort of about the genre, but interested, because it does sort of toe this line of you're getting these elements of like mythical monsters and beasts and stuff like that, but it's really about the characters. Where am I going with this? Basically, I'm saying that I really liked it. I really like a good journey story in fantasy in general, so it definitely falls into that sort of subgenre, and I found the whole thing very moving. Overall, I really wanted to give this a 5 stars. I just wish she'd cut it shorter. I truly believe that no book should be over 350 pages, but basically I think in the last 150 pages some plot points happen that I don't think are like really explored sufficiently, and then also the author spends a lot of time setting up the book for a sequel, whereas I think that this would have been just a really wonderful standalone novel, and I'm excited to read the next book, but at the same time I like truly don't feel like another book was necessary based on like the storyline of this one. So yes, all those things considered, it was a 5-star, and then in the last 100 pages or so it sort of became more of a 4-star, which is a loved it. It's a loved it, let's be clear here. It's definitely a book that made me think a lot. Okay, cool, let's move on. So after that, I read The Secret Life of the American Musical, How Broadway Shows Are Made by Jack Viertel. I'm like not a super fan of musicals. I've seen a couple. I enjoy them. I enjoy the occasional musical soundtrack. I liked Hamilton a lot, as everybody does, I guess. At the same time, I don't consider myself like a super fan, but this was actually a really interesting book. It's basically sort of a dissection of musical theater as a form, as specifically American musical theater. So it really actually is about narrative structure and how you tell story and how that fits into this particular form. And those are aspects that I found really interesting. I think if you are, I don't know, a process nerd, or if you're really into narrative in your own way, like you're a writer, or you just enjoy thinking about stuff like that, I think that this could be a really interesting book. It sort of dissects how musicals in general are very formulaic, but how the formula can like promote creativity in of itself, and how book writers and lyricists and stuff like that can actually really, within sort of the tightly regimented structure, make beautiful things. I will say that it is quite involved, so there are examples taken from many different musicals. I'd heard of about half of them. I'm actually familiar with the music of maybe about a fourth of them. Overall, I think that it was a little bit long for me just because I wasn't as familiar with all of the examples that were being used, but I do sort of have like a general fascination with how story works, both in nonfiction and fiction, and other forms as well. So yeah, I would give this one a solid 3 stars. That's a liked it. I liked it. Okay, cool. Those are all the books that I finished in May. I know what month it is, guys. But I thought I would quickly go over my sort of what I'm currently reading and my June-July TBR. It's going to be a big one, guys. I am still reading How to Write an Autobiographical by Chee. As I've mentioned before, I tend to go through essay collections quite slowly. I'm less than 100 pages from the end of this one, and I'm still really enjoying it, but it's not done yet, so pew pew. I also picked up Janet Malcolm's 41 False Starts. Again, this is an essay collection that I'd been reading sometime last year and I sort of petered out, but I'm on it again. Janet Malcolm is a sort of culture critic and essayist that writes a lot for The New Yorker. She's my mom's favorite nonfiction writer, I think, or my mom's favorite critic. I don't know what category you'd put her in. I actually got stuck towards the end because I hit this 80-page profile of like the editor of Artforum in the 80s, and I was like, I mean, this is interesting, but also I like do not care about this woman. So anyways, I am skipping that 80-page chunk, which I always feel sort of bad about when I say like, I've read something and then I haven't read part of it, but you know, I feel like that's fine. And then the first big project for June and July is Middlemarch. Yes, I'm very excited to get to this. This is a book that I've been meaning to read for years, and I just have never gotten around to it, but me and Milena are reading it together, and I'm really excited. If you follow me and don't follow Milena, you should go follow Milena. If you have any interest in classics or literary fiction, she's like a really great channel. So my assumption is you all already know about her, but if not, get to it. So I'm really excited about this. I haven't actually started it yet, and it's almost 800 pages. So I'm a little bit worried because I have self-declared hatred of long books. But that's a personal feeling. That's not that long books are bad. That's that I'm incapable of holding attention for that long. So we're gonna do it. I'm very excited. This is happening. Okay. On top of that, I am also judging the semifinal round of the Booktube Nonfiction Prize, which I'm really excited about. And I'm not really allowed to tell you anything about my thoughts and feelings about these books until the end of July, but I will tell you what I will be reading over the next couple months. The first one that I have already started is A Promised Land by Barack Obama. This is his most recent memoir about his years in the Oval Office. We also have Inferno by Catherine Cho, which is a memoir of motherhood and madness. I think this is a memoir of her experience with postpartum psychosis, which is something that I don't know anything about. We also have After the Last Border by Jessica Goudeau, and this is basically the story of two different refugee families that have come to the US, and I think their path there and their experience here. We have Conditional Citizens by Laila Lalami. So this is both a memoir and a political book about becoming an American citizen, and I think covers a lot of modern political issues from a personal and historical perspective. We also have Red Comet, The Short Life and Blazing Art of Sylvia Plath by Heather Clark. This has been on my radar since Olive read it and loved it, so I'm not allowed to say anything about it, but I'm reading it. The last book in my grouping is Hidden Valley Road, Inside the Mind of an American Family by Robert Kolker. This is basically about a large family where many of the kids ended up being diagnosed as schizophrenic, so it's sort of about the family and then also scientifically about the genetics of schizophrenia as far as I understand. And this is the one book that I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to get my hands on just because the library hold list is so long. So yes, as I mentioned, I'm currently reading Obama's book. I'm about 100 pages into it. I would really like to read all of these books in the same format because I know I like digest books very differently in audiobook form and in ebook form. However, I don't think that that's reasonable for me getting all of this done. Red Comet is over 1,000 pages long. Obama's book is over 700 pages long. I'm just worried, especially with my declared hatred of long books. Considering that I'm gonna be doing a mix of and audiobooks, and I'm really gonna try to make sure that I'm focusing when I'm reading the audiobooks, so that's a big thing for me planning this out. But I'm very excited for the Booktube Prize. I really hope that this sort of kicks me out of my nonfiction slump, which I've been in for quite a few months now. So very exciting. Hashtag Fat Book Summer. So those are sort of my summer reading plans in general. I am sort of a project reader, so when I have some vacation time, I like to prioritize books that I don't normally have like time or energy for. This is a lot of projects, and I'm excited to get to it. But yeah, let me know what you're planning on reading this summer. If you've read any of these, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear it. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Yes. No. Yes. No.
Come hither, peasant. Come here. Who are you?
Our starship is in trouble.
Okay, Leslie, listen, if you don't know,